So I missed a video immediately after Rocket Lab's Q1 and Q2 financial reports. However, as now it's been 1 month since the Q2 financial presentation was released, I thought I'd put out a late summary of it. So without further ado, make sure you subscribe and like, and let's get straight into it. So let's firstly go through some key accomplishments of Rocket Lab in Q2. They had 3 successful ELECTRON launches, which is more than any other small launch provider for the whole year so far. They deployed 37 satellites in these launches. They had a successful CAPSTONE mission for NASA. They signed a multi-launch deal with HAWKEYE for 15 satellites, which is over 3 missions. They completed the first mid-air capture of ELECTRON with a helicopter for reusability. I would say it was mostly successful. Personally, I would say it wasn't entirely successful, but I have a video on this here, so that'll be put up in a pin in the top right. So I'd advise watching that straight after this video to learn more about that. They've began construction on the NEUTRON production complex. They were selected by NASA to manufacture Glide solar array panel. They began construction on the satellite constellation production line for 17 500 kg spacecraft buses for Globalstar, and they surpassed 50 missions with the MAX flight software. Now, of course, a lot more than this has happened for Rocket Lab in the second quarter of 2022, but in the interest of keeping this video concise and getting into the perhaps more important financials, I'll now move over into the financial portion of this video. And of course, the full presentation is linked down in the description along with the financial report. And this video is in no way financial advice or a substitute for reading the whole presentation and financial report itself. So yeah, make sure you check that out in the description below. But yeah, firstly, revenue was expected to be between $51 and $54 million according to their previous Q1 presentation. And Rocket Lab was able to beat these revenue expectations, posting a revenue of $55.5 million, in which launch was in line with expectations, accounting for $19.1 million, and Space Systems slightly beat expectations, bringing in revenue of $36.4 million. Gross margin expectations missed with a GAAP gross margin of 9% and a non-GAAP gross margin of 22% compared to expectations of between 11 and 13% and 26 and 28% respectively. GAAP operating expenses were slightly lower than expected at $38.2 million compared to expectations of between $39 and $41 million. Non-GAAP operating expenses were slightly higher than expected at $25.2 million compared to expectations of between $23 and $25 million. Looking more deeply into the financial statements rather than just the investor presentation, it can be seen that Rocket Lab reported a net loss of $37.4 million, which compares to the figure a year ago in Q1 2021 of a net loss of $16.7 million. However, this is to be expected, at least in my opinion, for a high-growth space company like Rocket Lab, and revenues have also been continuing to grow as a result of acquisitions and also growth of Rocket Lab's original products. We can compare a year-on-year increase in revenue of around 392% to the net loss increasing by around 125% year-on-year. Interestingly, Rocket Lab ended the quarter with a smaller backlog of $531.4 million, which is actually $14.5 million less than at the end of Q1. However, it's suggested that this is a result of realizing record revenues in Q2 of 2022. Rocket Lab is also still sat on $546.6 million in cash equivalents, and restricted cash. It will be interesting to see what Rocket Lab does with this and whether there are any more acquisitions in store for us. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. Rocket Lab expects a revenue of between $60 and $63 million in Q3, along with a GAAP gross margin of between 12 and 15% and GAAP operating expenses of between $41 and $43 million. Finally, shares outstanding are expected to increase from 464.7 million to around 471 million. Now, I'd just like to reiterate that this is by no means an exhaustive and deep dive into Rocket Lab's financials and their financial presentation, as you can probably tell by the length of this video. This should only serve as a brief overview and summary, and I encourage everyone to look into the financials and the presentation in the description below. I don't know why I pronounced that so weirdly. But anyway, leave a like if this was useful and comment on what you think about Rocket Lab's results and whether these videos are useful or not. Thank you. Please subscribe.